It's super short, genius, fantastic. I love it. I'm coming in hot at a 6. No surprises. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. Don't everyone come in at a 6
alert,
or you're banned for life. Okay, so
people are going to switch off now. That's
no,
the only thing
well, they should to read the story and then come back.
But they know what the best part of the show is.
Yeah,
the numbers.
The best part of the show. The best part of the show is when we argue about mammoth people, like we did.
No, it's the numbers. What numbers do we set?
We spent the entirety of Daughters of the Moon just arguing about exactly what kind of fake mammoth people were in the story, and honestly, that was good. It worked.
I remember arguing about it, but I don't remember the content of our argument. Were you trying to say they were anthropomorphic mammoths?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that again on this show.
Well, yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, so a summary. So
it is summary. The sun's shining and everything.
Oh my god, we're all a little wacky today. It's okay. So
yeah,
in the story there are 2 types of librarians: awful ones and witches. The narrator is a librarian of the second sort. Her witchy book magic is used for the enrichment of the human soul by shepherding people to books that fulfill them. Witch librarians have a primary purpose: to give people the books they need. They also have a secondary purpose: to protect magical books that have led to miracles, spooky magic murders, broken hearts, new religions, and witch burnings. The second purpose often comes in conflict with the first. The narrator sees a foster care teen who is yearning to escape. His soul is spiraling towards some sort of death. She has seen this before with another teen who suffered different circumstances. She had tried to give the girl from her past the book, capital B, that she needed most, but would not break the second rule of protecting the sacred magical books, even though she knew it was what the girl needed. The girl died directly as a result from the suffering in her soul. The narrator will not make the same mistake twice. She breaks the second rule to faithfully carry out her first duty. She gives the boy who needs escape a witch's guide to escape, a practical compendium of portal fantasies, and he portals to a Feyland right there between the stacks. God, it's good. Okay.
Good summary. That's probably one of the best summaries that we've ever had.
I would say Andy is the best summarizer on this show.
Yeah, but by far. The most intelligent and most incisive.
Oh my goodness. What is happening right now? Why is this happening? I feel like you guys are conspiring. Like something's about, like, I'm waiting for a shoe to drop.
No, we're just a couple of nice boys that you hang out with.
A couple of nice boys, yeah. Maybe. Jeez.
All right. First question. How do I become Alix Harrow? Follow up. What did you think of the story overall? Whoever wants to go first.
I don't know. I'd rather be a librarian than Alix Harrow.
No, I want to be Alix Harrow because this story itself was magic and it seems possible.
No, I'd still rather be a librarian.
Of the first sort or the second
no,
sort?
No, not of the first sort. First off.
Of course not.
Okay, Andy, what did you think of
the story?
Oh, really good. In fact, the first thing I said when I came home from work yesterday was, hey, our story was really good this week. So that's exciting. I was trying to put my finger on what I was going to say, and I was hoping you guys had more insight, but you all just seemed like you loved it. Why is it good? It's full, I guess, is what it is, right? That's the best descriptive. It's full. All the sentences have content, and it's juicy, like a prime rib. It's succulent. It's a very succulent story, I think I would say. Not like a succulent plant, which are actually, they grow in dry places. But I guess a succulent plant is wet inside, huh?
All right, moving on, Gerald. Gerald, what did you think of this story?
Wow. I think the story is like a flowering anemone. No, I didn't approach it in a good frame of mind because last week we had a sort of a bitsy story and I didn't like it at all. So I thought, bitsy story. So I stood after last week's show. I just started looking at it, and I think as soon as you read the first sentence, and the author put the word zillion in it, and you think that's interesting, and then I sort of read a bit more, and then I finished reading it because I couldn't really stop. So, and this was just after the show last week. So I loved it. I loved it because it's got a beginning and a middle and an end. That's it's a story, and it's all well. I like my stories to have beginnings, middles, and ends because that's what a story is. So yeah, so it did that, and it had interesting characters and very, very good writing. We like the writing a lot. It's very clever, very, very clever. So so I liked it basically.
Yeah. So yeah, the writing is just genius. I feel like I was highlighting everything. And I think what Andy said about it being full is right. Like it never repeats itself the same way. And when it repeats a point, it's always in an interesting way and adds just a little more color. It's so smart. It just moves at the right pace and it balances like serious contemplations of what books do to people, the benefit of books, what people need, what teenagers need in particular, because both people who need something very strongly are teenagers. Other people need stuff too, but like there's a focus there. And it does all of that while being funny, like huge laugh out loud moments and extremely visual. There's just some beautiful passages where you're just like, well, that painted just a very rich picture in my mind. The writing is just genius. Truly amazing. And then I think the other thing that it does really well, since it's in the fantasy genre, is that the plot is contained within the magical structure that it had to convince you of first. Like you first need to be convinced of this complete fantasy element, which honestly, harder said than done. She does it very quickly, and the plot is contained within it where you feel the tension of a thing that really does not exist in our world. So good. So good. And for purposes that we can identify with, right? Like the things she wants to do is something we recognize and we're cheering for her to do, and it's within the confines of this thing that she made up. So good.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So that's my analysis on why it's good.
Yeah,
but since we keep go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, I was interrupting you. No, I love the idea that books had sort of feelings and emotions and actions and things like that, and opinions, yes, and they, I mean, this a little bit where it says the sewing and pattern books noted that his jeans were unlaundered, blah blah blah, and this is the cookbooks diagnosed a diet of frozen waffles and gas station pizza they tusked to themselves. I mean, what a you know, and I think she's created a world, a story world that we recognise, and we also can understand that somebody, a character like the woman, would be that sort of person and would be a little bit quirky and a little bit, but sort of deeply motivated by the desire to do good and. Yeah, she so cleverly did that. I really like that.
And even that, she's drawing a picture of this teenager through this funny element of these like judgmental books, like anthropomorphized judgmental books. Like just, it's so clever because it could be maudlin to describe these things about this emaciated teen, right? But she's giving it to you in a way where you still feel and see what you're supposed to feel and see, but in a way that just feels full of light and color. And I also love that the books get smug, like, red meat to the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So since we keep talking about the prose, I thought we'd get that out of the way because like we can just gush forever. So before we started recording, I asked each of you to find a passage or two and then just read it. So we can just discuss why we like that one. So Andy, if you want to go first.
Sure. All right, I made a note of this. But seriously, anyone could see that kid needed to run and keep running until he shed his own skin, until he clawed out of the choking darkness and unfurled his wings, precious and prisming in the light of some other world. Wow.
Yeah.
Also, I like the way the imagery launches, right? It's like anyone could see that kid, normal stuff, running, and then claw out of the choking darkness, unfurl your wings, precious and prisming. Precious and prisming.
Prisming was amazing in the light
Right.
of other worlds. So it also has this thing where like he's taken off and it starts dark, 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 and it's bright like a fucking rainbow.
Yep.
Amazing. This is what I mean by it's just so rich and colorful.
Like a what
Whoa.
rainbow?
I swear,
Like a
I
what
swear, I
rainbow,
shouldn't have
Anise?
sweared. I know, I'm trying to be good, but it's so exciting. I know. Well, so exciting.
There's us trying to be all good and everything.
Yeah, I'm very
And
bad.
your second piece, Andy?
Yeah. So this is the sad part. It reported only that the faintest secondhand scent of the boy, futility, resignation, and a tarry oozing smell like yearning that had died and begun to fossilize. Yeah.
Tari oozing, fossilized. Genius.
Tarry oozy yearning, right?
Yeah.
Oh. Because
And then you take something tarry and it fossilizes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it. Like it.
So good. So good.
They're very tasty words.
They're so tasty.
Mm.
So good. Okay, Gerald, what were yours?
Yeah, mine are fairly short bits. There's an extract, which I'll read it. It says, at which point a grey pop-up box that looks like an emissary from 1995 tells you, and that is just so library. Libraries are sort of, yes, they have computers, but they're very old computers, and the software systems that you have for checking out books are old and clunky and not very nice at all. And I just thought it just really resonated. And and another, the second bit, a leather-bound tome filled with delicate mechanical drawings of clocks which smelled of regret and yesterday mornings. What? Smelled of regret and yesterday mornings. Just she has such a wonderful way with words. Really, really clever and beautiful.
Yeah. The smell magic was great. There was smell magic everywhere and it was so clever.
Yeah.
So my two passages are the one where she explains the two kinds of librarians. So there have only ever been two kinds of librarians in the history of the world. The prudish, bitter ones with lipstick running into the cracks around their lips who believe the books are their personal property and patrons are dangerous and delinquents come to steal them. And witches. I just love the cadence. I love just like it's like da 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 da, and you know exactly what she's describing. And witches. And I just want to start saying and witches at the end of everything. So I just thought it was a nice melody. There's a lot of nice cadence things in this as well. And then later,
sorry, I want to compliment like the proper joke structure of that thing, right? Like,
oh yes,
right. There's only two kinds of things, and then you say the one that you think it was describing, right? Oh, it's good. Because you'd think the creaky old librarians, those are the witches. No, that's not. That's not how witches do.
Right, and also two things, right? The joke structure, that part of it, and you're expecting the contrast of like bad and good to be drawn out, but witches are self-evidently good. There's no reason for her to draw out why witches are good in contrast to these, mean librarians. Obviously, yeah. There's no need to extrapolate because she could have gone on and witches who use their magic to make sure. No, not necessary. We all know.
No.
Yeah. And I also liked because I am a librarian of the second sort, I almost always know what kind of book a person wants. It's like a very particular smell rising off them, which is instantly recognizable as murder mystery or political biography or something kind of trashy, but ultimately life-affirming, preferably with lesbians. So good. That's the one you wanted to do, right, Andy, that I stole from you?
That was the first one.
That was the first one. I really like that one because in a very short span, she goes from building the fantasy world you need to believe in order to buy into the plot, teaching you how the magic works, teaching you about this character and what she pays attention to, but ending with a joke we all recognize, ending with a genre we all know. So it's like always involving you as the reader, so you don't feel it's just such an elegant way to world build while keeping it light, which is hard to do.
And also, like in that sentence, right? She spends more time on the part of the world build that's not fantasy, just in order to offset it, and then she doesn't need to, right? There's these mean old librarians, like actually you're thinking of. And then this other thing. And that's what we're dealing with in this story. No, don't need to dwell on it further.
Right.
It's great.
Right. I also had a backup one that going back to the visuals, because if you guys didn't pick it, I wanted to read it anyway, so I'm just going to do
Okay.
it. All right. Which was the most venerable libraries, the ones with oak paneling and vaulted ceilings and Beauty and the Beast style ladders, have secret rooms behind fireplaces or bookcases, which you can only enter by tugging on a certain title on the shelf. St. Genevieve in Paris is supposed to have vast catacombs beneath it, guarded by librarians, so ancient and desiccated they've become human-shaped books, paper-thinned and ink-blooded.
Yep.
There's like a mic drop at the end of that. I don't know. It's so good. Yeah.
Also, just great job identifying the Beauty and the Beast ladders as the best part of the library. That's
Yep.
incredible.
Yeah. Everyone knows what it is. Yeah. So good. I loved human-shaped books, paper-thinned and ink-blooded.
Yep.
You can just picture them. It's so good. All right.
I just look at that when she's talking about the kids' guardian or person looked after her. It's a squat white woman with a plastic name tag and the kind of squarish perm you can only get in southern beauty salons with faded glamour shots in the windows. It just again, it is the cadence, it's the rhythm, it's the poetry of the sentence. It's just so spot on, really, really good, and just paints that in just a few words, paints that picture. You think, yeah, I know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so good.
Lovely.
Okay, Andy, did you want to squeak in a third now that Gerald and I have?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine.
I was going to comment on how we specifically picked two, so we didn't just keep picking every sentence.
I know, but it's that good. It's the plot itself, the characters, we're going to get into that. It's great, but the writing is just so good.
You know what, though? Honestly, the very first sentence, I didn't remember the first sentence as I kept reading the story, but like looking back, Gerald mentioned it, but like what a zinger. You'd think it would make us happy when a kid checks out the same book a zillion times in a row, but actually it just keeps us up at night. Like, oh, there's a thing. It's going to be about a thing. There's a thing. You'd think this, but actually that. Oh, I wonder why. Because witches.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay. Turns out witches. Is there anything we want to say about the plot? I feel like I summarized it, but we haven't talked about it really.
Not really. I suppose. Yeah, it's a plot, but it's not. I mean, it's like you can sort of see it coming, can't you? And the way that she sort of unveils things about the boy by the books that he chooses. So there's some journey to this story that there's going to be, and she tells a bit about the young girl who suddenly changed the books that she was choosing when she got pregnant and all that sort of stuff. So you sort of get that there's a journey and there's going to be a culmination to the journey. So I think, yeah, it just, I suppose it didn't really surprise. It was just, I don't know. It's really hard to describe the plot, really, because the boy comes in and borrows different books, and then the story is told.
I guess it's sort of an inside-out plot, right? Like, the boy's journey is completely stereotypically the same as the first part of every of the Portal Fantasy books the kid's reading, right? Kid goes to a library, finds a magic book, goes to another world, escapes his terrible life. Like, that's standard, but the kid's not our protagonist. The librarian's our point of view character. Adds different stakes, right, to the thing. It's not really about whether this kid gets away or not, or what adventures he's going to have. It's about what she's going to choose to do as a custodian of both the books and this kid.
Yeah.
Real good.
Right. It's her, the plot is really her character development. because you know how like at the end she starts getting defiant, like, you know, when they like ostracize her from the Sisterhood of Witches, she's already like, well, you guys forgot our main purpose is to give people the book. Like she's already like building her defense in her head, because that's really what it's about. Yeah. But it doesn't end with her necessarily being ostracized, because that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is she did the good deed she wanted to do. He disappears right there from the stacks and goes off to a Fey world, and she gets that confirmation that she saved him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
I also
Also,
like
I'm
that
real glad it. Just among the things that name dropped was Ged from Earthsea. Oh, I just reread Earthsea recently. Ged's some stuff, man.
I also like how she describes all the other characters, like the way she describes Agnes or the social worker, the sort of periphery characters. She spends not as much time with them, but just as much love and light in describing even their sort of like shades. Like there's just a lot of humanity to them, even though they're harder characters, and it's very nice. Just a lot of empathy for every character in the story, even the ones who, you know, could, in the hands of a less skilled writer, could have just been like the bad one. Like Agnes is just here to like remind the reader that what you're doing is bad, but she reminds the reader that what you're doing is bad without making Agnes a villain. Agnes is never a villain.
Yeah, I think that is good. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, you're right. All the characters are treated with care and love, really, even though they're sort of different to the main character and perhaps pursuing different agendas. But there's no condemnation. There's no real antagonist other than the boy's life.
Yeah. Okay, one last question since we're like over. My last question is, the spirit of this story, name a book or more than a book if you want that changed your life. Or just had some effect on you. Some book you read that you were like, oh. They can be all fantasy books, Andy. It's totally fine.
I don't know.
Did Andy freeze?
No, that's just my face.
That's your face. I think for me, there's like several books that would fall into this.
Notice of this question.
Maybe you should have,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll lead with an example. It doesn't have to be something that like fix the broken part of your soul. That's a lot, and also I don't know. We don't always know when that's happening, I guess. But I guess like books that like taught me like, oh, you can do this, or I didn't know this was allowed, or just like stayed with me for different reasons. Like I remember in college when I read J.G. Ballard's Crash, which is a lot. Like it's about people who fetishize car accidents and people whose bodies have been broken by car accidents. I remember just thinking, it was so strange to me that this writer had picked such a, on its face, kind of repugnant like vehicle for the story that he wanted to tell, and yet it worked. And it's short. It's a pretty short book, and you get through it to the end, and you're just like, huh. Like it's about like the blur between what it is to be a human or not be human. And there's like a lot of stuff going on in that book, and it's really smart. And he picked such a shocking vehicle to put it through, I guess pun intended, because it's all about cars and people who fetishize cars. Anyway, I just remember like that being like, I didn't know you could do this. Like that really sort of, or like I didn't know this was possible. Or I hadn't seen it before. So it always stuck with me. Yeah. And I guess another one similarly around that same time was The Scar by China Mieville. There was some things about it that stayed with me. Andy, I want to know why you snorted. I don't know if I'd recommend it. There's a lot of things with it that are like, huh?
Didn't we read that together?
Did we? I don't remember.
I've read it, and I think I talked to you about it.
We were friends at the time, so it's
no,
possible.
We read The City and the City specifically together.
Yes, The City and the City, which is much better than The Scar, in my opinion. Yeah. Did you ever read The Scar?
I did read The Scar. I think I read The Scar because of you, and then we read The City and the City together.
That makes sense. But did you read, would you agree City and the City is better?
Yes, City and the City is better. Although, honestly, I've come off China Mieville from recent He had one about lying aliens, and I was just like, this is just pretentious. I'm done.
Yeah. Right. There's a lot of things that are wrong with that book, but I really liked I don't know. It felt like it was doing a few new things in the fantasy genre to me that I hadn't like. It was like mixing things that normally don't get mixed, and I remember that just thinking like that was new, or it was new to me. Maybe someone else had done it, I just hadn't read it, but that was the first time where I was just, like, it's like fantasy and sci-fi and like science and like physics stuff and like quantum. It's like weird. It's really weird and it's bizarre, and yeah, there's aliens and talking cactus in the same planet. And the talking cactus are not aliens, by the way. They're natives. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I like that. Like books.
Yeah, you upset Andy, so he stormed out.
He stormed out. Yeah. Andy stormed out. Yeah. And right now I'm reading The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is changing how I think about trees. Every time I look at a tree, and I'm just like, oh my God. So I guess it's changing my life that way.
I tell you, I mean, probably one of my favorite books of all time is a book I read a long time ago. It's not famous at all. It's called Down to a Sun and the Sea, which is a sort of thriller about. It was written in the 80s, so it's about StreamYard gave me the boot. Hopping back, he says. It's about sort of nuclear war and everything's bad and people on a plane that are trying to find sanctuary and safety. They don't, but then they sort of do at the end, which is sort of the sort of dark and uplifting ending at the same time, which is quite good. And in a similar vein to what you were talking about, which is not in a book but in a TV show, Fargo is having humor and really dark crime / horror together. And I've noticed it more and more now that people are now making quite dark crime thrillers that actually have humor in them as well, which is, I just think that seems to be a thing now. I haven't found any books that do that, but I'm going to try and look. But there seems I've seen a few programs on TV now that have that. That's like what's it called? There's one about a contract killer. Russian contract killer female. Can't remember what it's called.
Oh, I think.
But that's.
I can't remember the name either.
And
it's Jodie Comer. Yeah. I picture her face. Yeah.
Jodie Comer and
the show or the movie. She's done two things with this. Killing Eve. That's the show. With Jodie
Killing
Comer,
Eve. That's it. That's what it was. Yeah.
Killing Eve's really good.
Yeah, and that ability to have humor in some very dark, very bloody narrative is quite interesting.
You know, it's funny, as you mentioned Killing Eve, I thought to myself, as you mentioned Killing Eve, I just thought to myself, Killing Eve is like the thriller, action-packed, kind of like grim, dark-ish, but not really version of something kind of trashy, but ultimately life-affirming, preferably with lesbians. It's sort of like adjacent to that. It's not exactly what people want when they look for that, but...
Oh, very good. Yeah. Very good. Well spotted.
Killing Eve.
That was very good. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe subconsciously.
Yeah.
So where's Andy then? Where's he gone? He's run away.
Yeah. I also remember in high school, the first time, I vaguely knew the story of the alien, but I'd never read it. And we did a whole analysis on it in high school in a history class. And it was the first time where I started to form really strong opinions. This is where it started, Gerald. Really strong opinions about a piece of work that many people have already had really strong opinions about, and I would get really fierce in class, and I was just like, wait a minute, Keely sucks. Keely's the worst. And then it happened again a couple years later. I was going to say it happened again with The Merchant of Venice a couple years later when we were doing Shakespeare. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great to have strong opinions about things, and even if people don't agree with you, it's great to talk them out and talk, talk those opinions out. StreamYard isn't booting. Oh dear.
Yeah, and he's having a hard time joining us.
Yeah,
But yeah.
what a shame.
I also
But it was
remember
sort of
reading
finished anyway,
also.
hadn't we? So,
Yeah, we're pretty much finished. I was also going to mention. I also remember one thing that's also great about reading really old books is it reminds you things we think are new and modern usually aren't. Like, oh, these ideas or these visuals or these things have been around forever. I'll never forget reading. When did that book come out? It's pretty old. The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. And when did that come out? I want to say, 1908. Even older than I thought. I was going to say like the 10s. It's 1908. And it's a thriller with like all these biblical things because it's G.K. Chesterton. But it's a thriller and it's a big heist. It's got a big chase in it. And at one point, there's like these two characters sitting in a bar at a table. The table starts to corkscrew, spinning around, going underneath into a subterranean layer that's shaped like a bomb with a bunch of guns interlocked on the walls. And I'm like, what? This is much like I thought that was a more modern thing. And it's like, here it is in this book from 1908. And I just remember being like, so like even sometimes reading fiction that's not at all meant to teach you history, you're like, wait a minute, we've been the same for a long time.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a quick the story I've chosen for next week. I just had a quick skip through it, and I thought, oh, that's quite a modern idea. And, oh, that's but it was written in 1989, so it's 89, 99, 2009, so 30 odd years old, but still have quite modern ideas in it. So looking forward to that. Yeah. So
okay, so it looks like Andy can't rejoin, but that's fine because we're near the end and he was going to give it a 6 anyway, obviously. We know his rating.
Yeah, tell us if it's not a 6, Andy. Oh no, he hasn't.
Yeah.
So that's 6.
Oh, he's probably not. I'll ask him in Slack.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. God, this story's good. It's so good. I can't.
It is. It is very good. I just think when you said before the meeting, you said how good it was. I thought, was it really that good? But then when I sort of because I read it last week, so I read it briefly before the meeting. I thought, yeah, it's very good. It's very clever. Very nice, very nice writing, and a good little story. So
Gerald,
I'm
what's your
giving it
rating?
a 6.
Yeah,
I'm 6 all the way through.
Oh yeah, 666. No.
Andy says 6.
Yeah,
I know, strange.
he said 6 with
maybe
3 exclamation points.
Yeah, so that's good. That's doubly good.
So, Gerald, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we're reading The Gentle Seduction, a sci-fi story from 1989 by Mark Stiegler.
Okay, but before you go, share the book that changed your life in our Facebook discussion group, the Literary Roadhouse Readers. If the witchy narrator has inspired you to help people find the books they need, practice a little bookish internet magic by leaving a review of this podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your pod. We don't have podcast membership dues, but we do take contributions at patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with a librarian who could, with just a look, turn you into a pillar of salt. Until next time, read a good story.